read. You have to read because you develop a sense of storytelling. You develop a sense of flow of something. You develop a story even if it's completely remote from what you have read. All of a sudden, something sprouts out of it. Just very recently, I give you an example. I read about Winston Churchill in his early days when he's 19 or whatever. He was in Parliament. And from the other side of the aisle, a woman, I think the first female member of Parliament, she had a very screechy, unpleasant voice, shouts across the aisle, "Mr. Churchill, if you were my husband, I would put poison in your coffee in the morning." And he, without missing a beat, shouts back, "Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it." You see, it's so beautiful, and it will linger. Maybe it will pop up as something similar as a dialogue. Maybe it will pop up as a sequence somewhere. And this is something completely overlooked. I see film students at very prestigious film schools, and nobody of them is reading. They just don't read. And they will all be filmmakers, mediocre at very best. They will never make a great film. And you can tell some of the truly good, great filmmakers are people who read. Errol Morris, for example, he reads voraciously. Terrence Malick, he reads. Francis Ford Coppola, he has his own library. Recently, I've been in closer contact with Joshua Oppenheimer, who made The Act of Killing, one of the most important films that you have seen in the last 25 years. He reads. So it's my encouragement to everyone, just read. I was intrigued by Edda poetry, 1,000-year-old Icelandic poetry, and it's just unspeakably beautiful. There's a very, very beautiful translation of it by Lee Hollander. And when I was in Iceland, it was all snow in snow. And my hosts said, we can take you anywhere in Iceland. We have four-wheel drives. And I looked around. It looked boring. And I said, no, I should do that in summer, going around. And what else would you like to see? And I said, I would like to hold the Codex Regius, a crumpled little codex, a parchment, handwritten codex in my hand. And I actually had the privilege to be brought down into an atomic bomb safe bunker under the central bank, and I was shown it and I held it. And recently I held it again, I even filmed it. And it was such an incredible experience. It's like the Death Sea Scrolls for Israel. You hold it in your hand, you emerge, and the barber gives you a free haircut, and the pastry baker gives you his best pastry, and you have to taste it. It's that kind of thing. And a physical approach to it. This awe to hold it in your hands. It's priceless. Some of it probably predating the writing down, maybe something even 500, 600, 700 years earlier. And it begins with the Völuspá Edda, the creation of the world. Just read two stanzas. In earliest times did Ymir live. Was nor sea nor land, nor salty waves. Neither earth was there, no upper heaven, but a gaping nothing, and green things nowhere. Was the land then lifted aloft by Búr's sons, who made Midgard, the matchless earth, the matchless earth. It's just very good stuff. Shone from the south, the sun on dry land. On the ground then grew the greensward soft, and on, and And later in the text, there are short, almost like fragmentary stories of Völund the smith, where a smith is kept captive and his knee sinews are cut so that he cannot run away. And he invites the son and daughter, the young adolescent son and daughter of the king who has kept him captive. He lures him into his smithy and he kills the son and makes a golden sort of cup out of his skull and lets the king drink from it. And he makes the young daughter, the young princess, pregnant and then flies away like a bird. And it's so laconic and it's so dense and so fragmentary, and yet beyond all this you have this enormous sense of a continuous story, and you have to fill in the gaps. And very often in cinema you have to fill in. You see somebody entering a house. You do not have to see him climbing 4 stories up. You only see him knocking at the door upstairs. You don't need the entire distance. So it's how you condense, how do you abbreviate, how do you find a shorthand in a story. That's really, really very good in the poetic Edda. There's one book that I would ask you to read. It is The Peregrine. And I'm saying that for my rogue film students, it's mandatory. And I believe everyone who is about to make films should read The Peregrine. It was published 1967 by an obscure writer. We know nothing about him, J.A. Baker. And he watches peregrines. But the intensity of watching and the passion with which he watches this very small segment of the world is so extraordinary. And that's exactly how we as filmmakers should watch people, reality, this kind of incredibly deep attachment and also a visionary language. I do believe that since Joseph Conrad, we have not had prose of this caliber. We have not had it. And I will read very short things out of it because you are the ones who have to read it. And it's just very, very beautiful. He describes, for example, a frozen heron. It was a very cold day. January 9th, the sun shone today for the first time this year. It was the clearest, coldest day I have ever known. North of Ford Lane, a heron stood knee-deep in snow. The gale did not rock him. His long grey feathers were unruffled. Regal and frozen and dead, he stood to the wind in his thin sarcophagus of ice. Already he seemed to be dynasties away from me. I have outlived him, as the gibbering ape outlived the dinosaur. At 1 o'clock, a pipistrelle flittered above the lane, twisting and diving as though it were catching insects. None could be flying on so cold a day. Perhaps it had been roused by the sunlight and was hunting in a dream of summer. And I read something, just a descriptive part of an owl, the face of an owl. He has this wonderful mastery of prose. The helmeted an owl. The helmeted face was pale white, ascetic, half human, bitter and withdrawn. The eyes were dark, intense, baleful. This helmet effect was grotesque, as though some lost and shrunken knight had withered to an owl. As I looked at those grape blue eyes, fringed with their fiery gold, the bleak face seemed to crumble back into the dusk. Only the eyes lived on. The slow recognition of an enemy came visibly to the owl, passing from the eyes and spreading over the stony face like a shadow. But it had been startled out of its fear, and even now it did not fly at once. Neither of us could bear to look away. Its face was like a mask, macabre, ravaged, sorrowing, like the face of a drowned man. I moved. I could not help it. And the owl suddenly turned its head, shuffled along the branch as though cringing, and flew softly away onto the wood. So, it's a caliber of prose, but it's an all-over worldview that is so remarkable in this book. It's not so much a book about watching a bird, it's a book about becoming a bird. Sometimes Baker writes that the peregrine soars and soars higher until it is a dot in the sky, and then he writes, and then we swoop down. All of a sudden he has morphed into a peregrine, and he crouches over a kill. After the peregrine has left, and he writes, we live in these days in the open, the same ecstatic, fearful life. We shun men. So this is a book which, if you want to make films, you better read this one and incorporate it as a way to see the world and experience the world and morph into the world and become singular, is a singular element with your dancing chicken, with your monkeys on the raft, with Emiliano Zapata with his eyelids. You see, when I see these films, when I see Viva Zapata, I'm somehow morphing into Brando, and my eyelids get heavy, and I could give the same answer. So it's something that becomes alive inside of us, and that's what I miss. That's what I miss among many of the young filmmakers, and it's important. In particular Encounters at the End of the World, my voiceover doesn't explain much. It was remarkable when Peter Zeitling and I stepped off the plane on the ice runway, and you have this step out in this glaring sunlight of these glaciers and the ice, and it's blinding you, and you're trying to find a first orientation. Peter said to me, Werner, how for God's sake are we going to explain an entire continent like this to an audience back home? And I said to him, Peter, you know what we do? We do it like the ancient Roman poet Virgil in his Georgics. He doesn't explain much. He just names the glory of the beehive. He names the glory of pruning the apple trees. He names the horror of the horses invading the stable. So that's what we'll do. We do not explain much. If necessary, yes. Otherwise, we name the glory of an entire continent, and we name the glory of those people who have chosen to work there as scientists. My voice in films, of course, I've been asked many times, how do you find your own voice? I think when you're a filmmaker, you do not need to do that. Commentary does not really require your own voice. However, in a way, I discovered that there was a certain authenticity when I do the own voiceover in my documentaries in particular. And I know I do it well. I know the commentaries that I speak myself are very well spoken, and they have also an intensity in it, and sometimes an almost hypnotic quality. You really listen. And I know that my accent is awful, but I do not want to improve my pronunciation any further. So it is as it is, and audiences got accustomed to it. They have accepted it. If they wouldn't accept it, I would never do it again. I have actually learned from American popular television, like Unsolved Mysteries. The voice was particularly wonderful, this kind of sonorous, sort of deep sort of gloom and fear spreading voice. And it says, for example, in When the Dentist came back home after work, he found the door to his home ajar. It was open and there was blood. He steps in, blood everywhere. And that's where he knew there was something wrong. Pause, pause, pause. Terribly wrong. So I really love this. And the penguin marching, I tried to imitate the voice a little bit. The penguin is marching towards this certain death, marching away and into the mountains, and it will perish there. Pause, but why? So it has a certain humor in it. These penguins are all heading to the open water to the right. But one of them caught our eye, the one in the center. He would neither go towards the feeding grounds at the edge of the ice, nor return to the colony. Shortly afterwards, we saw him heading straight towards the mountains, some 70 kilometers away. Dr. Ainley explained that even if he caught him and brought him back to the colony, he would immediately head right back for the mountains. But why?